many of us who are beginning to awake within our consciousness. So within the research of things, first of all, you have to go into explain or define to any other individual this term and why. Okay. Melanated Empire. Peace, love, and coconut oil family. You know how we do at Melanated Empire. We have another installment for you, trying to bring that fire and that truth to help in the awakening process going on worldwide despite this coronavirus, as Emmanuel Benjamin was just reasoning about. So we have with us here on this episode, one Heru Maat is one of our very own scholars in St. Lucia. I know many people thinking for a third world country and a small island like St. Lucia, we probably don't have any scholars as we do not have exposure to that much material. But we do have our very own, and he's going to give an introduction of himself. He's also I would say, the founder of the White Lotus Temple, which is a research center right here in St. Lucia. So without any further ado, we're going to let the Bedouin introduce himself.
Yeah, hetepu, bet, ank ujas neb. Dua emiaku, dua amun rapata. Give thanks for the presentation, King. It's an honor to be here with you and with the whole Melanated Empire family. Just a brief little history of myself. I grew up in St. Lucia. I was a Rastafari from a very young age. I learned a lot of my my discipline originally from the Bible. And then, of course, new horizons, new information. So, of course, I had to transform like Kepera, like you did the last show. I had to become what the information was bestowing on me. It started with my cousin, Abdullah, who was one of the first Rastafari on the island. And I inherited his study. I inherited his knowledge of history and theology, and odd years, and we're still at it, collecting books, always researching, sharing what we learn, and we're trying to live in sense of community, a sense of communalism again in this capitalistic environment where the foundation of the system is you exploiting your people and your brother. And so we also do some writing. We have the Wohem Mesu. We already did 2 issues. We're working on a 3rd. And in these, I basically introducing African authors, African perspective, shifting the paradigm to introduce the African to himself after he's been torn away from so long from who he is. So we're trying to give them a sense of what it is to be African, because it will not come easy. It's something that requires study, a lot of study, to change this whole worldview from a Eurocentric paradigm where the almighty, the essence, the Aku is outside, whereas the African science, it was within. So we are trying to uplift the youth, let them know that they are our future. Without them, we're nothing. You know, how like they say, Uhuru, I am because we are. You know, back to that African concept. So basically, that's who I am, Wsir Heru Maat, out of St. Lucia. I'm just there to uplift my people.
Peace, God. So you did mention that you have you have managed to put together 2 copies, I can say, or 2 volumes of the Wehemesu, right? Would you call it like a little journal, or would you call it like a pamphlet, would you say?
I would say it's like a little journal, maybe like 40 pages or so, 30 something pages, 40 pages, where I go through the ancient African science, a little bit going before what we know as traditional African culture, which is basically more of a survival mode, where we were chased out of our fertile lands and had to find the most horrible places to live in, trying to escape the invaders who came from the north. And our cultures were how would you say, transformed into something that would be distant from its pristine and original form. So we are tapping into Kemet, which is the one of the original, because it has all the artifacts, the different papyri, of course, stolen and kept in all the museums and different private collections. But we are trying to unfold what has never been taught, what has never been told to African people. And no one will do it, so we have to. That's why I love what you're doing, Asai Amun-Ra. I love what you're doing, and you have to keep it up. We need more brothers like you, to ask questions.
Yes, yes. So as a family will see, and as you said, you basically grew up in the Rastafari faith from a youth, very young, right? Mm-hmm. But how would you say that your perception, your present perception, differs from the contemporary Rastafarian?
Well, as I was saying, it has to do with the Eurocentric paradigm. The European is fairly a new people in a sense that through their adaptation to the weather and the environment, they lost some of the attributes. For instance, one of the 7 laws, which we call rhythm, the European has no rhythm. And rhythm, of course, is part of the whole socialization orientation of a human being in Africa. So you can see that they are a different set of people. Of course, we are the same human being, but they lost a lot of the essence in the coal. After all, the coal kills. Everything that you put in the freezer, it stagnates and it dies. So these are survivors, but they were transformed. So right now, we must try to learn what they took and build their civilizations with and hid from us. So we're just going back to the source. And the Wahem Mesu is, we can use that. But the Rastafari people, it's about time they get a shake up. They need, and I like what you're doing, Simon Ra. You're asking the questions. And trust me, it will be long, because I mean, when you come from the darkness and the light hits you, at first you fumble. At first you can't see, you're blind, until slowly you get accustomed to the light. And that's why I love what you're doing. And it will wake up a lot of Rastafari people to the African inheritance. I'm not hearing you. You're mute.
Yes, right. Yes, I had muted myself to just cancel out the background noise for the time.
Okay.
Yes, give thanks for that. So you're basically saying that your perception differs from the contemporary Rasta because you do not share the Eurocentric views that most Rastas presently do hold, right?
Yes, precisely, because Haile Selassie cannot be the creator. He cannot be omnipotent. He cannot be omnipresent. He cannot be omniscient. If you're omniscient, you don't have to learn. You don't have to go to school. If you're omnipresent, you would be on the plane with the pilot dropping the bombs on Ethiopia.
True.
You're omnipresent. If you're omnipotent, all-powerful, then just a thought can stop the war, can stop your people from dying from mustard gas. So if we are indeed to accept that Eurocentric idea, then we would be making Haile Selassie as cruel as the God of the Bible. Having the power to make a difference, but refusing to. Is he unable to, or is he refusing to? So these are all the questions that must come along with watching His Majesty through the perception or the spectacles of the European. Now, this is where we've fallen as Rastafari, because highly Selassie, anyone can be, any of us can be a Selassie, a power of the Trinity. Anyone of us can activate and become that. His Majesty chose to become that. Through his own culture of Christianity, Orthodox Christianity, Tewahedo Church. But in all religions, there are the mystics. And the mystics go beyond the exoteric meaning of all scripture. Just like the Jews, they have the Kabbalists. With the Christians, they have the, what you call them? They have the different sects of the Illuminati and the Freemasonry, where they dive into the esoteric meanings of certain things in scripture. Now, Rastafari was founded by Freemasons who were well accustomed to all the mysteries and the allegories of the Bible. But what happened after 1958 and the different groups, the Bobo Shanti came into being, that was the time when all of the leaders of Rastafari were sent into Bellevue, the madhouse. And those coming up choose to put fire on, lighting candles, and all the different ancient sciences using the elements, like Bongowatu or Bonagees.
Bonagees, yes.
Yeah, Bonagees was against the Masonic orientations of, what's his name? The dark skin, Nathaniel Hibbert, Joseph Nathaniel Hibbert. So you can see from that time, Rastafari has always been a mystic. We are not Christians. We are mystic people. So right now, that's why I like His Majesty, because His Majesty pushed the works of a man who we call Sevapalli Radhakrishnan. He was the Prime Minister of India, I believe. Okay. And he was a Hindu. And he was saying that no, not Hinduism or any other religion should remain stagnant. And with more information and in scientific information, all spiritual concepts should grow and evolve. A lot of the speeches His Majesty, some of the speeches His Majesty said were not his own, but was from Sevrapalli, Radhakrishnan. So His Majesty was of a deeper spiritual, esoteric background than a lot of the Rastafari pushing that Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel. We have to go into the science, because it was science that birthed religion.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
So you're basically saying that it was Nathaniel Hibbert that was one of the founders of Rastafari, and his teachings, because we can see from some of his pictures, which I will upload when I do some editing to the video, we can see that some of the emblems he wears are completely Masonic in origin.
Of course. Yes.
Yes. So you say that Bonagees and even that individual, the Emmanuel Charles Edwards, who most Bobo Shanti refer to as the Black Christ, like they sort of rebelled against his teachings.
Well, yes. Well, it was more Bonagees. Emmanuel Charles was actually a student of Hibbert. That's where they got the colors and the robes, and sometimes you see Hibbert with the gloves. They got this from, you see, Emmanuel Charles with gloves. Yeah.
Sorry, King, you had just broken up a bit. You said that's where Emmanuel Charles Edwards got the what? Sorry.
Got his knowledge of the esoteric
Okay.
That's why he was able to say the black man is God in
Is
flesh,
God
black
in
man of
flesh.
right. Black man of right and truth is God in flesh. Now, all this is esoteric because how can a man be God?
Mm.
How can a man be God? Well, first analyzing the God concept, because of course, with all English words come with it a stigma, with it a concept. So the God concept most times is a being, an entity outside of yourself,
Outside of you. Yes.
which you cannot, with all your intellect and your brain power, you cannot fathom. It's an entity that's unfathomable. You cannot fathom this being that creates galaxies, many suns, and still you would say he checks for the ant. How can you, in your mind, have, that's why the African never named that entity, because you name something you know. That's why we call that entity the Amen, the hidden one.
The hidden one. Yes.
Yes. Most of the gods, the name of the gods in Africa are descriptive words, because that entity, you can only get to know that entity through the emanations, who they call um, Netru or Orishas or Abosom. So that is how you know the characteristics of the Amen. But to approach the Amen, it is unfathomable.
All
You
right.
know, but the European think they can approach the Amen, you know. But
Yeah.
how can you approach the Amen? You don't have the brain, and they are left brainers. They only know how to dissect and study parts. They cannot see the whole. And this is
Mm.
the dilemma.
Okay. Now, in your deliberation, you basically answered my third question, which would be, would you say that it's a mistake for Rastas to identify Haile Selassie as Jehovah, which is the God of the Bible?
No, man, Selassie is greater than the God of the Bible.
Mm.
The God of the Bible cannot see Haile Selassie. No way, no how. Selassie is much greater, 100 times greater than the God of the Bible.
Mm.
Because the God of the Bible told some people, go over yonder. There's a piece of land I give to you. People that have never lived on the land, never saw it. But yet still when they got there, people were already living there.
Mm.
So what God would give a people a land they never saw with other people already living on it? So that makes God a bigot. He was a God of the Israelites or the Jews, but he wasn't a God of humanity. So if you see where I'm coming from, the concept of Jehovah is a concept of a God that's jealous, wrathful, bigot. What's the other one again? Patriarchal. So all these qualities, they stem from somewhere, and they stem from the ice, the culture of the ice, where the woman was food, where they lived in houses made of bones,
The Iceman
and you had to
inheritance.
be the Iceman inheritance. Yeah, so right now, that's what's ruling the world. That culture, that concept of individualism, which you cannot find in Africa. You can only be. I have a book. I would like to show you that book. It's by Fukuyao. Let me get it for you. I think it's a very interesting book. Ah,
African Cosmology of the Bantu Congo.
Yes, by Dr. Fukiao. And in this book, you're going to the Congo. Now, most of us in the Caribbean come from the Congo. A lot of us come from the Congo. And in the Congo, you can see that the spiritual system of ancient Kemet is still there, and you can get the connection. You know, in this, they show you about the Ankh, how the Ankh means a master, someone standing between the V's, someone that is in the stage of Masoni, what you call your mature level, which is the red zone, and the birth, which is kept, they call it, some call it Kepra, because Kepra doesn't only relate to cancer, it also relates to the birthing of the sun.
The birth of the sun, yes.
Yes, so you can call it Kepra, you can also call it Kala. We are born, that's where the cross comes from. We are born, we mature, we die, we resurrect.
Like the 4
So
points, like
this
the
is
four
the
stages.
Yeah, the 4 stages, the black, the red, the white, and the yellow. You know? So this is from this system that's from the Congo. And in this, he speaks about the human being. How can you describe a human being without his connection to the community? So what we emphasize so much on in the Western world, this individualism, you know, this false thing we call success. But if you're saying you're successful, then you must know your purpose.
True.
So what we watch as successful is more superficiality. And our happiness comes from having things that our neighbors, those immediately around us, don't have.
The material things, the
Material,
tangible items. Yeah.
yes, that's from the whole Eurocentric paradigm of materialism. You see, they are on the outside trying to look in, but we are on the inside trying to adapt our spiritual orientation to a world that has become mere physicality and materialism. And we are clashing right now between ancient faith and modern science. Whereas in our time, the priests were the scientists.
True. True. Because there are texts that actually show that the priests of Kemet of ancient Egypt were actually the scientists, the astrologers, you know, the teachers,
the warriors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we now have to get back that perception, because they have a thing saying perception is the key.
True.
So when we get back that perception, that knowing that life is not a game to sit on the sidelines and watch the game in the bleachers. You have to take part in life, or else it will pass you by. We're only here for a moment in time.
True. True.
You know?
True.
But the thing is that Dr. Fukiao also says again that the past is the cemetery. And before someone goes into the past, that person can live on for thousands of years, because you are only dead when you are forgotten. So it is us right now to bring back to the people the worship and the reverence of things that outlast stars, planets, suns, human beings, principles. Principles.
I hear that. So, and these principles that you mentioned would basically be the understanding and the perceptions, like take, for example, the Neteru and the Orishas, for example.
Precisely. That's it. Yeah.
I love those answers. I love those answers, King. You be giving us some real serious knowledge there, man. Glorify that, top scholar. So my fourth question to you would be, since you say that the emperor surpasses the Jehovah of the Bible, right? We know and acknowledge that most Rastas today do identify the emperor with that biblical deity, right? So would you say that in your view, would you say that such relation has held this Rastafari movement backward?
Currently, yes. But we have to realize that a human being is a creature of habit. And most times it takes for our backs to be against the wall before we start moving forward. And it is a very hard thing to take away a concept from someone who cherished that concept. A lot of Rastas learn to read from the Bible.
True, true.
So it will be a hard thing. But what can you do? We are all, how you say it? We are all people that are living in different times and affected by these times. We cannot go beyond what we know. And the Rastaman, right now, he is faced with knowledge that can help him grow. So it will be to his detriment that he don't accept that growth. Because just today I was reasoning with a brethren, and I was telling him that Rastafari has already begun to change. Anything that sits stagnant grows moss and starts to decay and die. It's called movement. Because what really is life but motion?
Facts. Because change is the only constant in reality, really.
Right. So right now Rastafari is stagnant. You don't hear our voices. We don't come out beating our drums. And it's strange. Why I'm saying it's strange is because before we were doing it, the fruit wasn't ripe. Right now, the fruit is ripe. Right now, people are opening up to the African past. Right now, Africa is stretching over their hands. You know? So right now is the time for us to be knocking our drums. But we cannot come with the Eurocentric knowledge of Adam and Eve and these things that will be sending us backwards. Because in this concept, how do we deal with the patriarchy in that concept there?
True, when majority of the spiritual concepts of Africa is matrilineal, we can say, or is at a balance.
Yes. So to deal with the Bible on them levels, you would say exoteric levels, to deal with it and bring it in the house of Rastafari, that would just lead to more confusion, as if we'll be turning up our nose against information that's coming to help us.
True, true, true. And we can see that presently with a lot of Rastafaris. Sadly, the Bobo Shanti as well, rejecting this new age of information as it clashes with what they hold with the present belief system.
Well, try as they may to fit the African perspective and African spirituality into the Bible, try as they may, it's like trying to fit a circle into a triangle.
Trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, really.
That's right. Yeah. How can you do that? Because the God of the Bible has pure Eurocentric tendencies. He's jealous. He's wrathful. He's a bigot. He loves only a few people. He's the first mass murderer. They tell you when they destroyed Jericho, not even a dog of the city was alive. So that's not the African God. Definitely, that's not the African God. That's the Eurocentric misinterpretation of an African science.
Mm.
because the origin of Christianity is in Africa, but it is coming from Africans under duress of colonialism
Of colonialism. Okay.
by the Romans. Because after the Romans defeated Carthage, they came and they conquered the Greeks. The
Sure.
Carthaginians warned the Greeks about the Romans, but they didn't listen. So the Romans end up taking over. They get the Serapis story, and they use the Serapis story to make an empire. They use religion to build an empire. And that's what it was really about. It wasn't no spiritual. Even the man that held the Nicene conference, or the what they call the conference at Nice,
Constantine.
Constantine. Constantine was baptized a Christian on his deathbed. And that's like 15 years after the council at Nicaea.
So what was he before Christian? Would you say he practiced Mithraism or?
He practiced the worship of the different gods, because that's what ruled the earth. They got that from Waset. They got that from what they call Luxor, Thebes.
Luxor, yeah, the temple of
Karnak.
Waset.
Yeah, they got that from Karnak. That spread all over the world. That same science, because it wasn't just somebody just coming up with that. It was about thousands of years of studying the stars, crystals, the human anatomy, the chemicals, and all them things came into a synchronicity. And that synchronicity is what we call religion today.
Okay.
I have this other book that describes it very good. It's Count Volney's Ruins of Empire.
Roads of Empire.
Yes. When you read this book by Count Volney, he was a European. After he wrote that book, he was denied entrance into America. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. He was one of, they call the fathers of what they say, Orientalism, something like that. But he spoke about the African being the founder of civics, medicine, science. He said all that, you know. And in that book, he talks about for instance, why is a lion associated with Leo? Leo doesn't look, the constellation of Leo doesn't resemble a lion.
True.
But it was the African living on the plateaus, seeing at that certain time when the sun rose in that constellation, they saw the lion come into the Nile to drink water. So it was a study of nature, and all these things came into play. The European take the science, but remember, in the ice, you cannot see the stars. There's no herbs growing there in the cold. So they were void of this knowledge. So when they came into Africa, they got the knowledge and they ran with it, not even really overseeing the concept, because if they did oversee it, they would not sell maybe Pythagoras into slavery. They would not execute Socrates. You know? So if they were embracing this science, because the history of Rome, when you study the history of Rome, the history of Greece, and you see the strong patriarchal tendencies going as far as child molestation. That's why up to today, when you go to church, all the angels are still baby boys.
True. So sort of
Because even
like a pet, what do you call it? The pedophilia.
yeah,
That's where we can see the pedophilia present in these religions.
Yes, because they considered before the energy transformed. That energy, of course, I'm talking about puberty. When the energy comes and now you have these sexual tendencies, and before that, it was just one pure energy, you know? So they were trying to get into that refined energy before you reach into the great battle, you know, the great battle of controlling that that sexual nature we all have, you know, and the oscillation, you know, trying to balance yourself, because life is really about mathematics, measure, you know, and balance.
Balance,
You know?
yes.
Yeah.
And my art is still balance, really.
That's it. Mathematics comes from math.
My art. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. You did say that Constantine, on his deathbed, he converted to Christianity, and prior to that, he was practicing the spiritual systems which we can refer to as a sort of pantheism, right? So, at what point in time would you say the pantheist culture became a theist culture? Theism, where they practice the worship of just one deity that existed outside of an individual, instead of seeing all of us as part of that divine consciousness.
That's a good question. I would say the coming of Africans trying to correct the European system. Africans still under duress, like Tertullian, Saint Augustine, and these Africans that origin, these Africans that were seeking something pure. The European only uses religion to control, for political leverage, to build empires. It wasn't something they felt, because before they came into Africa, they had none. They had no real concept that would say everything is divine. For them, only God was divine. And that divinity they spoke of had to be harsh, a harsh divinity, because the environment was harsh. So the one God concept was simply a concept for them to cement an empire together and call on one God. Of course, using a lot of different elements from the Kemetic, from Zoroastrianism, from Mithraism,
Mithraism, yeah.
a lot of different elements of what, because remember, they had none. They had none, but they were trying to bring a lot of different people together in the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire is much of a design like today. In the entire Roman Empire, only around 15% were citizens. 85% were slaves in the Roman Empire.
85% of the Roman Empire was slaves.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
So, but it's the same thing today. We are slaves, but we're still working hard, thinking we're free. But if you stop working, you end up in debt. And debt is the real modern day slavery.
Yes, 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 yes. The what they refer to as the economic slavery.
Economic slavery. But that comes from a warped sense of reality. When y'all read that God says, live like the ants. And we try and live in our own little cubicle in the world. That for us, success has to do with comfort. Success has to do with escaping, how would you say it, your responsibilities as a father, as a spouse, as an uncle, as a brother. There's so many responsibilities on a human being. But what we call success is an escape of responsibility. So you can buy somebody to take care of your mother. You can buy somebody to take care of your child. You can buy somebody to come and do your yard work, to come and do your garden. You can buy it. And you live this plane with nothing. Because what you would have gained from here is experience. And if you buy all these things, then what experience would you have to live here with? That's why the ib, because the heart is the heart, but the ib is like the esoteric heart.
The esoteric heart, yes.
Yeah, it's a container and it's with your essence. It's basically representing your character. You know, and how do we build character is by being of service.
Is that same responsibility.
Responsibility.
So it's that esoteric heart, that ib, that according to the Medunator was actually weighed on the scales against the feather of Ma'at, and not your literal heart.
Yeah, your character was weighed against truth.
True.
Now, character is something you don't get in a day or two. Character is something that's nurtured. That's where our set comes into being. It's the nurturing of the heart. Now, we must have the right companionship. We must live a certain way. You know, I mean, no one is perfect. That's why the weighing goes on. You know, there are different degrees. It's not about black and white, but it's about degrees. You know, there are no absolutes really. You can see a very bad man, he has his good ways as well.
True.
You can see a good person, he has bad ways as well. So it's just a balance.
The balance again. We'll get back to that balance word.
You know, because yeah, it's character. You know, so the whole thing about Rastafari, because I have something very, I wish I don't have it here, but it's in all my papers. It's a book written, I forget the author's name, but it's about Rastafari and a new interpretation of Rastafari using the kinetic science.
Wow, I'd be interested in reading that book.
Yeah, I have it, you know. I have it. But that's when your perception your perception changes, and you start to watch the king on the throne as just another Nosut Biti on the throne, because the Nosut Biti was also worshipped as the Almighty. Because if you read the different letters where they exchange from different states in what we would call now the Middle East, different places in Canaan, they would write letters to the Nosut Biti and saying, he's like the sun. They would call him the sun. And if when he died, the sun sets. So they would be comparing him to the Almighty that would give them the breath of life.
So in that essence, he would be. So in that essence,
majesty.
So in that essence, he would be sort of like a Sarah, like a son of the sun, really.
Yes, exactly. So this is how we have to interpret Haile Selassie on the throne. Is not the all-powerful God that can, but is someone that has raised to the level of the cerebral cortex, of the frontal lobe, of reason. His energy dwells there. His energy has already left the bowels of the beast, have already left the belly where all the emotions lie, and has traveled up the spine and gone into the temple. So that's why all the churches in ancient times were built like a skeleton. And the Holy of Holies was situated where? In the head.
Within the crown chakra, really.
Yeah, and even Christ himself was crucified at Golgotha, which means the skull.
Which means the skull, yes.
So, you know, so
So it's not a
Also,
literal place as well. So the Golgotha that they're referring to is still not a literal place, because I do recall that statement from Christ where he said that if thine eye be single, then thy body shall be full of light. So most
yeah,
definitely he is not referring to those two eyes that we have presently.
yeah, because there's insight. There's two eyes. There's sight and there's insight. Because we are trained to go left, right, up, down, forward, backward, but never inwards. No one teaches us to go inside. And inside is the real journey. You can travel for thousands of miles inside, in your mind.
True.
Yeah. So you're correct with what you're saying.
True, man.
Yeah.
True, King. Wow, wow. And just to touch upon quickly before I forget, you did mention Carthage earlier on in the reasoning. Carthage would also be that empire which is home to one Hannibal Barca, right?
Yeah, Hannibal Barca, the son of, I think, Hamilcar. Ha- Hamilcar Barca was the son of, well, his brother was Hans Jubal. His father what was his father's name again? Uh, it was Hannibal, Hans Jubal, and because his father was the one who really started the Punic Wars, fought in the Punic Wars.
Yeah, the three wars, right? The Punic Wars.
Yeah,
Three of them. Yes, yeah.
yeah.
And he was the one who crossed the Alps with the elephants.
Yes, he crossed the Alps with the elephants, and the magnificent thing about Hannibal was he was recruiting Europeans and all different people to fight against the Romans. But the Romans were so oppressive. He was even getting Italians on his side.
Wow.
But what happened is he spent so much time in the Alps that elephants died, and sometimes they would ambush him through big rocks on top of their heads, crossing the mountains, and he lost a lot of people. He lost, and certain people, his soldiers precisely. When you lose those soldiers, they are irreplaceable, because these are the soldiers giving the commands to the elephants. These are the soldiers that train the elephants. So when he lost them, it was just downhill.
They're just downhill from there. Yes, yes.
And they decided to escape him there and go and fight in Carthage. So he had to leave there and get back to Carthage.
And get back to Carthage, yes. Yes.
And I think it's Scipio. Scipio was the one that betrayed him. And I think he died. I think he drank poison before they got to him. He drank some poison. Yeah.
And they laid waste to the Carthage Empire.
Oh yeah, the General Cato was behind that 100%. Every time at the meetings, when they had the council, he would say, Carthage must burn today. Carthage must, sometimes nothing to do with Carthage, but he would always end his speech. Carthage must burn today. Because after they defeated Carthage at war, they made a deal with Carthage that they can attack no other person unless given the permission from Rome. And a lot of the different countries around Carthage did not like Carthage. A lot of African countries did not like Carthage because they were setting up themselves as how would you say it? They were oppressive because they had become a great power in North Africa. And they were oppressing other African nations. And it was, I think, Numidia that helped the Romans defeat Carthage, because they attacked Numidia, but they were being, how you saying it, antagonized by Numidia, and they attacked Numidia, and that's when Rome said, okay, Carthage was burned, and they burned down Carthage.
And they burned down Carthage, yeah.
They burned it down to the ground.
Yeah, I think I read an article where they said that after they burned it down, they laid salt on the land to make sure that nothing grows there.
They were afraid of Carthage, man, because remember, Carthage was the greatest military power in the Mediterranean.
Mm-hmm.
And once Rome defeated them, it was all over.
Then that was
Because
it, really. Yeah.
they really got their powers from the Phoenicians, because Carthage was started by Phoenicians.
Mm.
Yeah, because I have some books there. I want to show you the old. I have some ancient books I got. Yeah, where you put them? Okay. This one is by, as you can see,
Yeah.
it's an old one. This one is History of Egypt. This is by Maspero. Maspero was one of the early Egyptologists, a European. And in this one is about, there's one about Chaldea, Syria, Babylonia, Assyria.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one I have, this one, it goes into Egypt. And in this one, it has a nice juice in it for, well, for me, about the Jews, about Philadelphus and the Jews, in that while they were pushing out the Africans, the natives of Egypt, of Kemet, to the south, they were freeing up the Jews. They took the money from the coffers to free up every Jew that was a slave in Egypt.
Mm.
So when some people say the Jews were black, that's a misnomer. The Jews were not black.
So for black people to identify themselves as Jews or practicing Judaism, that is totally incorrect as well.
Well, Dr. Ben wrote We the Black Jews. But what Dr. Ben was referring to was the Falasha was the oldest Judaic people, meaning the oldest people to practice Judaism, which they learned from the Europeans who came from Canaan.
Yes, because I was just about to say, to me, the oldest Jewish synagogue, we find that in Turkey.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the oldest people.
The people, okay.
Because they are not the original, but the original taught them. And they would be classified as the oldest set of people practicing Judaism in the world.
Those are the Falashas.
The Falasha or the Beta Israel in Ethiopia.
In Ethiopia. Mm.
And they went, remember, they had the mission and they went to Israel.
The Operation
Israel,
Moses?
Right. And the Israelis treating them like shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's all about white supremacy. Whether it's communism, capitalism, it's all about white supremacy. George Padmore proved that. George Padmore went into the USSR and he thought it was a good thing. The treatment was different compared to the lynching and all thing going on in America and then places when he went to the USSR. And then he realized that it's the same thing, just in a more subtle way, the racism, you know? So he said Pan-Africanism over communism, all them thing. And the example we have, the best example in my mind of recent times is Julius Nyerere. Julius Nyerere of Tanzania. Tanzania is Tanganyika and Zanzibar. And
Zanzibar, yes. Called Zanzibar.
1964, they came together in 1964, and Julius Nyerere became the president, and he set up the Ujamaa societies, where he told them that you don't cap democracy. Democracy has nothing to do with a two-party system. You can have one party and still be democratic. And that's what he did, and he flourished. I think when he died, I think they made him a saint.
Saint Lucia Saint Lucia should take a leaf out of should take a page out of his book, really.
I always tell them that, because sometimes I'm vocal on social media platforms, and I always tell them that we don't need a two-party system. One party, vote for individuals. But in my book, not my book, a journal, in the Wuhem Masu, the second issue, I go into the Boko, which is a Congolese term for the community house. And this is what we're missing. Right now, if you go around our island, St. Lucia, you'll see that all the community houses are in shambles. And it is the community house that the communities find stability, find cooperation, and then individuals chosen at the community house would go to higher office. But that's not what's going on. Any Tom, Dick, and Harry that have money going and run politics. So we have forgotten the Boko. Look, I have it here. The Boko is a Congolese term for what we would call the community house. Our very efforts to demand justice for ourselves and others are thwarted by ingrained individualism, which is perpetuated by the systematic framework of capitalism. Abrahamic and many Eastern religions espouse an individualistic deity and ideas of individual salvation and love, which do not fulfill their fundamental roles in uniting and healing communities. Because that is what the Bible is about. My God, me, and my God. Because if a God come and tell you, to show you love me, sacrifice your son. That's not a God for everybody. That's an individual God.
God, sure.
So having a concept of that individualistic God, this is what we have. We don't have, that's why we don't come together. You know? We see God as an entity, and the Africans see that entity as existence itself. God is existence itself.
So,
Yeah.
well, I must admit, I have the very first edition of the Wuhem Mesu, right? And I'm thinking those who gonna watch this video, they're gonna want to find out where they can get their hands on these journals, King.
Well, you definitely have to give me a call, because a lot of these sold out, and I had to reprint some more of them. So you give me a call and I can get it. I still have quite a bit of copies left, so they can get some copies if they like. It is because in the front, if you see, the acknowledge of the ancestors, I put in certain names in there that would make people go and Google these names.
These individuals, yes, yes.
Out who they are. Like Edward Wilmot Blyden, like our own Quinlan, who gave the letter to Queen Victoria, you know? So a lot of Sir Arthur Lewis, Booser, Coffee, Paul Bogle, Amanish Keto, you know, Amenarenas, you know, Sakmak. Sakmak was the one, I think, who fought the Greeks after they conquered Kemet. They wanted to go down into Nubia. You know, there was Sakmak, then the Romans tried, and there was Amenarenas.
So we're talking BC time period.
Yeah, we're still talking BC. That's the time the Greeks and the Romans came in. You know, they were defeated by African queens, man. At the head of armies, riding at the front, missing one eye. You know,
sure.
So we are such a great people, but we're like a sleeping giant.
Sure.
You know, and no one wants to wake that giant, because that giant can turn their back on the world and survive, and the world will die.
Facts. That's real talk, man. That's real talk. Yeah. So, King, I must say, I must glorify and give thanks for you imparting such knowledge onto us in this interview. And I think I will seal it up by asking you the last question.
Mhm.
How can we apply this new knowledge, right, within this time of awakening to ourselves, to our race, to bring about a better future for us as a people?
Okay. All of us are sent here with a gift. All of us are sent here with a talent. All of us have something to bestow on humanity. And we are not punished by any outside force for the wickedness we do. The wickedness we do are what hold us back from becoming who we are meant to be. First, before we can do this work, there must be a free flow of energy. So there must be a right living. There must be a peace of conscience. If you don't have that peace of mind, that harmonious balance within, it will be hard sometimes for you to just complete the most minimal task in your life. When we study the African science, what we think subtle is more powerful than what we think is concrete. We study the ripples, but we must ask why. And when you ask why, you find out what caused the ripple. So what I'm really saying is that we need to balance our lives and balance ourselves so we can fulfill our mission. Because we all have missions, and if we don't do it, we'll have to come again and try again. And when we come again, nature might deal us another hand. It might deal you the energy you put in when you were there the last time.
True.
Because the thing about nature is always trying to correct something. Because like Haile Selassie I said, there is no perfection in nature. So nature is on a mission to perfect itself, always adapting. You know? So we now have to always try to adapt and get that inner balance within ourselves so we can fulfill what we meant. Because all of us, what you do in there, Saya Munra, it's not anybody that can come and do it. It takes some courage, it takes some eloquence, it takes knowledge. Eh? So it takes a lot. It's not anyone can come and do it. And there was something inside of you that told you, I can do it, I should do it, I must do it. That is your calling. And it's like a flame. You stop fanning it, it goes out.
Goes out.
So you have to keep on fanning that flame. Sometimes, as everything else, the oscillation will get weak, will sink sometimes, but the fact is, you're still persevering, you know? And every time you go down in a valley, it's like a push to go up a mountain again, you know? So we have to conquer ourselves, the first thing, conquer our animal nature.
The
And
lower self.
it's not an easy thing. It's not, let no one think that it's an easy thing to do that, because that animal nature is our fundamental. That's the fundamental part of our existence on earth. It
It's a
is,
survival part, really.
yeah, because we are not this animal. We are not this animal which we exist in. We are spirit beings. light beings. But we, because I think you did a video about you going into a car and showing how you operate in the car, but you're not the car. The car can get a knock, but you still there, you're safe. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
So the physical body, you can lose an arm, you can lose a leg thing, but you're still whole. The mind doesn't get old, only the body. The mind can always be fresh and sharp, you know? So we need to do a lot more reading, because a lot of us, especially Rastafari, they don't read. And it when you're a reader, from time someone opens their mouth and starts to speak, you know that they don't read. Reading is very important. There are many documentaries. We can listen to documentaries, but the persons doing the documentaries have books. So we must always go for the books. If internet locked down on us and no more internet, where are the books?
True, man. Real tough, man. Real tough. That's why I also glorify the Whemisu that you're putting together. You know, and I urge you to really continue that, Honorable, even though it's every 3 months or 2 months. Always bring about a new episode and a new edition for us, you know?
Yeah, because I try to write them when the energy is high.
Mm.
Sometimes the energy is low and the juice is not flowing like they should be, you know. And I would have to put myself in a flow. I would have to go back into my meditations. I would have to take it a little bit more, because we have a family. You have a lot of distractions, you know.
Yes.
Responsibility. I shouldn't say distractions. Take that up. I take that back.
Responsibilities.
Responsibilities. And you must always allocate some time. Wake up, go with your bash of water or your glass of water, face the sun, call on the ancestors, call on Amun Rapata, speak to the ancestors by calling their names, because you would not call names you don't know. You call a name when you know the character. You call Marcus Garvey, eloquence, courage, charisma. You call Harriet Tubman, courage, you know, bravery. You know, when you call the ancestors, you have to be filled with their essence, and that will help you go on, you know, because God is so all powerful. He didn't create us one by one. He created for us to come from others. So to get back to him, we have to go through them to get to him. It's
Because
through
it's all
our
just one.
ancestors, the great one.
Yes, because it's all just one energy, really. Yes.
Yes, one energy. Some have mastered the energy, because God is an energy. What they call God, it's an energy.
It's an energy. Yes. Yes.
And if you master that energy, you become godlike or saint or an avatar. But if you let that energy control you, but if God is all good and that energy controls you, then you should be all good. But no, you could be the most destructive force. You can destroy the world. You can build a bomb and destroy the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So that force we call God, it doesn't know good and it doesn't know bad. Those are concepts of man. God is a force, it's raw. And what we are here to do is, like you have a garden, it's things growing everywhere. We come to establish order. That's why my art is not karma. Karma is something that would happen maybe automatically. You do something, something come back and happen to you. But my art must be upheld. My art must be fought for. You know, because the good, what is good is fragile. What is wicked and not good is as strong as an ox. That's why when you put a rotten mango in around good mangoes, all mangoes rot.
Rot, yes.
That's why when you take a good mango and you put it around rotten mangoes, it rot too.
Mhm.
Because good is the most fragile thing. It must be nurtured. You know. Now this goes against the Christianity, the whole theology of the Western world. Just this basic concept of energy and you becoming that, like for instance, in the Bible, they portray a God that knows everything. Now, if that God knows everything, why destroy the world to destroy it a second time?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
why have somebody born that will turn out to be a mass murderer? Why you let the man that say yes drop the bomb on Hiroshima? Why was not that man born and nurtured? So we will find ourselves in a lot of confusion if we take on the Eurocentric idea of divinity. So basically, know yourself, learn everything you can learn, because all what you live here is because it's the car and the bar. They say the car stays here, the bar goes back to the source. The car is the spirit is the energy.
Mm-hmm.
When you go, if your car was weak, it will be forgotten. If your car was powerful, your spirit, your energy, people will call your name and be empowered by it. People will call your name to maybe get a free pass somewhere. Your energy will still be here. So we have to try and get back to our original perception, you know. And when we get back there, then we'll be seeing the world in a whole different paradigm. And then we can contribute to humanity, all the gifts we have, you know, because that's what you do. You come on earth and you raise your magnetic energy of attraction through creativity, because you will not be noticed unless you create.
Sure.
When you create, then you turn heads and people notice you, and people notice what you're doing. People are seeing you. Just raise your creativity, you know. So that's basically it.
Well, give thanks, Honorable Elder. Give thanks for all the information and for taking up some of your time for sharing this knowledge with us. And we are yet to still visit you at the White Lotus Temple. We had all that planned out, but then again, this COVID-19 thingy turned up and just put everything on a go slow. Right?
I have some nice literature. I have some nice literature to show you. Literature I don't put out like that.
Interesting.
Nice literature.
Interesting. And we feel very obliged and even special for even keeping that there for us, you know. We will be there.
Man.
We'll be there. Trust, we will be there.
Yeah.
Yes. So again, Honorable, give thanks. I pray that I ask that you have a blessed evening, you and the family.
Yes, give thanks, Rastafari.
Yes, King, Rastafari, and peace be unto you and the whole household.
Yes, Sinep Uncle Jack Sinep.
Uncle Jack Sinep.